Okay, folks, I anticipate the cross has sought leave to reopen his exam. Dr. Garda,
that was provided to you in this case.
Yes.
Exhibit the foundation for this campaign. I would offer that in evidence now. Look at 135. We could put that on there. February 12th, 2015. In your summary incident that happened in 20.
Worsening of her. Also, this is a public party, my understanding. And
And it's magnified the picture. No other questions.
Follow up on that. And you don't expect Kenzie and smile at Mr. Filner. True.
based on what
Certainly didn't happen. Unless it's this very small part of it. Yes, it is.
but it's consistent with the whole picture.
About the whole picture. Medical record. You've got houses, right?
Correct.
Nothing with
No, it's not correct.
what you did was look at your page. June 28, Mackenzie talks about having to take a plane flight, right?
I have a 7/28/06 note. I don't have a June. Did you say June?
Sorry, June, July.
July. Yes, I have a July 28/06 note.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and that's where she's making a comment about her anxiety at that point, true?
No. It's a more extended note. It gives her psychiatric diagnoses and it gives a description of her
I
medications.
understand that she's got what you call this OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Correct. And anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay. And then if you look previous to this, you said you started in 2003 with her records at page 132, page 2. The discussion there, you got one comment about OCD stable continued axle, right?
That would be the first note?
Yeah, in 2003.
Correct. That gives me information that she's on an antidepressant.
Exactly, and we don't see another note about anything to do with some type of psychological issue until July 2006, about 3 years later, right?
No, that's incorrect. The same year in '03, it says OCD, stable, continue Paxil. The note before that, in August of '03, describes Paxil, the antidepressant. The next note describes Paxil, an antidepressant.
I understand that, sir. Listen, all I'm talking about is where she's making a statement to a doctor. All right? This is the doctor's notes that says OCD stable. I want to go to the next one on page 2. We've got another progress note. Do you see that?
No, give me the date,
Page
please.
2. Progress note of September 18, 2006.
September 18th, 2006.
See it at the bottom of the page?
Okay, that would be page
2, page 4.
4. Thank you.
Got it?
I'm sorry, the date you gave was September?
Mr. Mitchell,
I'll show.
would you walk up? Yes, thank you so much. That would be very helpful if you would do that.
Here, let's go to, I thought you had the actual ones. Okay. Refer to that one. and it'll be okay.
Are you referring to the base date?
Yeah, the number on the bottom.
Okay.
All right, now we're on the right page.
All right, you see at the bottom of page 13204,
Yes.
where there is a note. September 18, 2006, where there's a fairly extensive note where she's talking about this obsessive compulsive disorder. You see that one?
Yes.
And it goes into the next page of 05, right?
Yes.
And then we've also got a note there, history of mild depression. Next page, right? On 05.
Yes.
And then March 2007. All right, you see that on page 132. We've got,
Yes, that's March 2000.
employees. And then we've got a April 10th. See that one?
Yes.
And then the next actual comment I see by her is, take a look at 13206. And you see the progress. Where there's an anxiety.
And then,
Follow this progress. Increase in anxiety. And then we got another note on August 14th. And she talks about the medication she believes are true. Note there from August, you know, note there at the top of the page, which there's another discussion 2 years later about worsening.
It's in 2009 about
That it was stated not in this talking to and take a look at page 132. I got a note at the October 1st, 2012. You see, talking again about help control this mild tendency. Right?
yes, that's what it says.
So you would agree with me. The medical record is actually talking, writing symptoms of disorder. I think in terms of all these medical about 8 and is
To about her doctor. I can only say that when the doctor mentioned, she in fact also didn't talk to her.
always about her talking to. There's about 8 to 10, sure. Reading the record, symptoms of anxiety, depression, or other.
Correct. It's about 30% of each note of the notes that and to 20 of them had comments.
The whole 13-year period.
Notes discussed antidepressants, the maintenance. So every note pretty much had that in.
Question. Telling her doctor about where the doctor wrote it down. You could see in the records that she did.
I would say, okay, afterwards there were other issues.
About the same. The other part of it is this. That psychological therapy, sure.
After,
Any psychological therapy, your passion.
correct,
And she didn't ask for that, did she? Psychologist or psychiatrist, did she?
this
Well, those were records.
I'm not privy to the business.
I had a question for you, Doc.
For review of records is it's 500.
Through today, how much that
Probably 30 hours of
hours did you say?
um,
Is that a word you heard?
it's a medical legal term. Both doctors who term.
And where did you get that term from? The term is independent.
No, it's a word. The medical and legal profession.
You ever read the Code of Civil Procedure?
I'm not a lawyer, I'm a doctor. I've read some parts of it, yes.
Medical examiner, but here, 0230102.
No,
You agree with me in terms of physical or mental examination?
it's not in this section, no.
Noted that we have provided a copy of the arbitration memorandum.
Yes.
Let's take a look at this again.
I read
Initial that Mr. Filner grabbed his
for Ms. McKenzie relating the events that she, just what she saw. I don't know.
your king said in your test the moment on her hands holding on to her that this was very shoved up over
Yes. I don't recall saying that she didn't exhibit any fear.
And that was going on when he had his arm around her like that. Her like that.
I think she was frightened, yes.
And she was anxious, true.
He disengaged.
Knew that when that happened, that she felt
That's what she told me.
one of the other words she used
fine, yes.
I'm going to give you another quote from Ms. Fear in her eyes, her face, as much as possible, conduct. Posture is from
Manner only in that she would stop being smaller is the way she described it to me. I don't know what Ms. Shred.
another part of her chest actually shaking a bit. Is Nancy was saying,
My testimony was that it did upset her.
things that you noted from Bob. You do this all over the world in cases like this. You're looking for that person said three lingering
The episode and what happened to her did not.
exhibit one.
Yes.
What you wrote is my customary and routine practice. Building, issue of credibility of persons.
Yes.
Right, and then you write, so I can't or deceiving work regards to what she, how long she against.
Is she correct? But I noted a paragraph in my discussion.
Later on.
So that paragraph, you just read one sentence.
Noted you talked about, and that is that I'm in 2014.
Yes.
She didn't report anything. This is not primary position on a base of not saying very much that
Looked at thousands of medical records, and I felt, and for a primary care record, they were patients' records in regards to their psychiatric status. So
question.
Another question.
They redirect Among the other things that you is was nice. Exhibiting.
Correct, there's no evidence of psychosis.
You describe the seductive
Version that he was leering at her. I wasn't there. To this, I'm just describing. Correct, that was her description.
and you also are grabbing around is touching.
I'm aware that he grabbed her around the head. I think she did not, that she was choked her neck. Her testimony.
Report.
On page 41 of my report, yes.
You wrote is, she described inappropriate behaviors and physical touching. There you go.
Correct.
Let's talk about somebody else. Your contact was paralyzed, was stunned. True.
He asked her to wait. He was giving an interview, and she waited outside. I don't believe she was on at that point. It was when he grabbed her that she felt those feelings.
Well, one of the things that she said after his initial comments to her about whether she was married, whether she was divorced, whether she had a boyfriend, when she made the comment to you that she was surprised by that because she interacted with mayors before and she'd never experienced that type of contact. True.
Yes.
And then it gets ratcheted up a little bit where the mayor, she says, grabs onto her wrist, right?
The first part of the interaction, yes.
And then,
She described it as either her hands or upper part of her hand and her wrist. She couldn't quite recollect it clearly, but that's generally a correct statement.
and then what she also told you is at that point, she felt that this was creepy, right?
That's her description of me 2 years later, yes.
And then you took that to mean, when she used the word creepy, that she had a feeling of fear or disgust about what was going on. True.
That was her general tone, yes.
And then she also told you that in her mind, she was saying, I didn't want to go out with this man. True.
Yes, that's what she claimed.
And she also described to you at the moment that he asked her for a date, that she was thinking about the fear of if she says no, what happens if the mayor decides to eliminate her position, right?
I have to check what she said to me in my report. I don't know if that was explicitly what she said. That certainly were her feelings later on. If that was what she was experiencing at that exact moment, I'm not certain.
Let's talk about some other things she said. If you go to page 33 of your report, You on that one with me?
Yes.
And this is where she's talking about her initial encounter with Mayor Filner, right?
I'm sorry, it's a whole page with 2 large paragraphs. Can you tell me where it would be that you're referring to?
Walk up there, put your finger on it, Mr. Mitchell, that's how we save time on stuff like this.
See where the word normally,
Yes.
and you see where a little bit, this is where she says, normally if somebody that I didn't work for, I would say, I don't see how that's any of your business about the personal comments, right?
Yes.
And then she relays to you, but I got sort of paralyzed.
Correct. That's what I quoted her saying.
And then she stated that we have a lot of power and can do a lot of things to change the condition of her job in subtle ways. And that was the first thing she thought of, right?
No. Well, excuse me, yes, she then said, quote unquote, that was the very first thing in my mind. That's what she claimed she felt 2 years before at the time.
You have no reason to disbelieve her, do you? So,
I don't know to confirm it or not.
but
I'll tell you what she was thinking 2 years ago.
and then look a little further down there, you write, she tells you, I have to get out of here.
That's what she described, yes.
And then little next paragraph, she talks about, I just wanted to go. I felt really confused, disappointed. Right?
Correct.
And so at that point, Doctor, you would agree with me that what has happened to Ms. McKenzie was what, in your experience as a psychiatrist, would be classified as an offensive contact by Mr. Filner towards Ms. McKenzie, true?
That's how she perceived it, yes.
Well, that's how you would describe what she described to you. That's how you would characterize it, right?
That's how I would characterize what she described to me.
And I think one of the other things that she says on page 33, it's right at the bottom of page 33. And this is after the mayor. The last sentence, you're right here. Right, this is after the mayor has grabbed her from behind. She says, I was humiliated in front of all the people. I was shocked. That's what she described to you, right?
That's her statement, yes.
So you would agree with me, Doctor, that for at least some period of time after this event, Ms. McKenzie had a feeling of humiliation because of the truth.
She was humiliated at that time. How long that continued, I don't know.
But at least at that moment, true.
Yes.
And you would agree with me that as part of what happened to her after this and during this, you would agree that she was inconvenienced, wasn't she?
I think it was more than that. I think she was very upset by it.
Well, minimum inconvenience, very upset by it, right?
Yes.
And you also agree with me, I think you wrote in your report, that this pre-existing condition of anxiety was, and I'm using your word, it was accelerated. Right?
I felt for a brief period, although it's not evidence with anything significant, like change in medications or having to see the doctor or emergency visits or anything like that. I think it was personally being upset.
But that's only because she didn't want to tell her doctor about this, true?
No.
You think it just ended like that, huh?
No, I didn't say it just ended like that.
I think you also said in your report that for a period of 3 to 4 months, she would have these people, right?
Yes, I would assume that she would.
And I think one of the other things she described to you was that after the mayor had put his hand on her left arm, that after this was over, she went to her car and she used sanitizer on her arm. True?
That was her description, yes.
In other words, she washed her arm off with it, right?
Yes.
Now, does this signify to you that what Ms. McKenzie was feeling at that point on what had happened to her is that it was disgusting? Right? Is that what that tells you?
I can only go by what she would have said, and I think that's probably her sentiments at the time.
In other words, the act of doing that leads you to the conclusion that she was disgusted by it, right?
That's basically the tone of her description, yes.
And what Ms. McKenzie described to you in your experience as a psychologist, you would agree was an offensive conduct that offends a reasonable sense of her personal dignity, true?
That would be her description, yes.
Do you agree that what she described was something that is an offensive conduct that offends her reasonable sense of personal dignity?
I agree with the fact that those were her sentiments and her perception of what went on, yes.
And one of the things that you will confirm that Ms. McKenzie did not say to you is she never described this incident as no big deal to her, right?
She didn't use that term with me, no.
She didn't even imply it to you, did she?
Well, she implied that the first contact where he grabbed her hands was the mild part of it. So I think the second part, when he was grabbed about the head, was the one that bothered her the most.
And you would agree with me that the conduct that Ms. McKenzie described was definitely physically threatening, what the mayor did to her, true?
To Miss McKenzie, it was threatening. I can't speak for everybody.
I got you there, sir. All right. And to her, it was definitely humiliating, wasn't it?
That's how she felt about it, yes.
And she also described to you how she was feeling after this event. And one of the things she talked about was that she was afraid to answer the phone sometimes because she thought the mayor was going to call her, right?
Yes, for a few months she wanted to avoid any potential for having further contact, and there was none.
And that's my point here. She wanted to avoid any further contact. So what she told you she did is she did not go down to City Hall because she thought she might run into the mayor. True?
Yes, I think there were 2 meetings a month that she might go to. Although he had never been at those meetings, she still didn't go because she wanted to avoid the possibility of running into him.
Move to strike the last part, Your Honor. That was the yes or no.
Motion denied.
So the next thing she said to you is she had heard from friends and associates that the mayor was jogging in Balboa Park, right?
Yes.
And she also told you that she was afraid of going out and running because she was afraid she might run into the mayor on one of his runs. True?
In that area, yes.
And she also made the comment, and you have no reason to disbelieve her, that she didn't want to venture too far from her office after this event. True.
For a limited period of time, true.
And you would agree with me that these types of reactions that she's having, in your experience as a psychiatrist, are reasonable ones for her to have, having had that contact with him on April 21st, 2013, true?
Based on her concerns, yes.
You find that those concerns from talking to her were reasonable concerns that she had about seeing this man again who had committed this act to her on April 21st, 2013, true?
Yes, they would be reasonable and that she didn't want to see him again.
And you also believe that it would be reasonable for her to have these feelings of fear that the mayor of San Diego might try to do something that would affect her job. True?
It's a much more complicated question. He never supervised her directly, so my impression was that the possibility of his causing her to lose her job because of unrequited interaction was highly unlikely.
That's your conclusion.
Yes.
I'm talking about what she told you. Do you believe that her fear as expressed to you that the mayor might do something to affect her position was reasonable for a person in Stacey McKenzie's position based upon what she told you about herself and what the mayor had done to her? It was reasonable, wasn't it?
No.
And I think one of the other things that she had mentioned, or you read in her deposition, is that she had the thought after this happened of who's going to believe me that the mayor would do something crazy like that. Remember seeing that?
Yes, that was one of her thoughts. But that was unfounded. Everyone she spoke with was supportive of her.
Right. But she had that feeling initially that people would believe her, right?
That was an initial reaction, yes.
And then she finally changed that position after these other women came forward and started talking about things that the mayor had done that were similar to what he did to her. True?
I believe before that she told her sister, she talked with the Rangers about it, and she may have, I don't know exact timing as to when she spoke with Ms. Ruiz in Human Resources, if that preceded when women came forward or not.
One of the things, you did a lot of testing here. And I want you to refer to page number 46 of Exhibit 1. 32. Do you have that?
Yes.
And this is this test you described, the NCMI 3
Correct.
results. And this is something, what is this called, the million something?
Correct. Millen, M-I-L-L-O-N, multi-axial inventory 3.
And you see there where, under the term possible diagnosis,
Yes.
the diagnosis from that test is obsessive compulsive personality disorder
Yes.
and the generalized anxiety disorder.
Yes.
And have you turn to page 48, where it talks about personality patterns. And why don't you read the first sentence of the second paragraph under personality paragraphs, where it says the NCMI3 profile, the objective test, where What was that first sentence say?
The MCMI-3 profile of this woman suggests anxious conformity to the expectations of others, rigidity and compulsiveness, and defensiveness about admitting psychological problems.
Let's stop there for a second, all right? Now, is this consistent with her medical records where she didn't talk about those problems very often?
No, it's consistent with a 15-year history of anxiety for which she was receiving treatment.
And it looks like you've also read that the test also showed that beneath this controlled facade, there are probably strong feelings. Downgrade yourself.
Yes, but those don't necessarily mean negative qualities. They mean that she has ongoing anxiety, but she's also very productive and successful too. Successful people can have great insecurities.
So turn to page number 49. Let's go to page number 50. There, isn't it? You see that at the bottom of the page?
Yes, but I do have to caution that these are printouts from the statistical test material, and they're much less focused on this particular patient. They're general comments. I rely mainly on the statistical analysis and the scoring. That's really what you should base your medical opinion on, not the computer printout narratives.
Well, nonetheless, this is the results of that test, right?
They're the narratives printed out, yes.
Well, let's go to some of the other stuff. Take a look at page 57 of your report. Go to page 57. Are these continuing parts of the MC, whatever it is, the middle line?
No, as of page 54 on is the MMPI-2.
This is another one of these objective tests, right?
Correct.
And take a look at page number 57. You see the conclusion there, where her score was 81. And one of the items, item 2 is...
Excuse me, there's many scores on that page. You're referring to the very top one?
Top one.
Thank
Number
you.
one.
Okay.
Okay. And under number 2, it says that she exhibits excessive use of repression and denial. You see that?
Yes, that's one of, I believe, 3 different descriptions that they give. They also give normal individuals.
I understand that.
They also give, well, I want to give it in context, because to give that simple statement is to not really represent what the test is saying.
All I asked you was, number 2 says the excessive use of repression and denial, right?
That's what number 2 says.
That's all I asked you. And then if you look at the item where it says K and it says T equals 65, you see that?
Yes.
And that reads, scores in this range are typically obtained by individuals who tend to be defensive and unwilling to acknowledge psychological problems and distress. That's part of it.
That's part of it, correct.
And the rest of it is they are prone to maximize and disregard problems with themselves and their lives. Right?
Yes.
And the other part of this objective finding is self-insight and self-understanding are usually lacking. And they're very concerned about how they are perceived by others, typically view emotional problems and weaknesses. True. Another objective finding, but right?
That's what it states in the narrative description.
question for you about Ms. McKenzie going on a radio show. Would you agree that going on that radio show was an important step for her to come forward with what happened to her and share that with others in a public view?
It may have been for her, I don't know.
And for a person like her, you would think, or you would agree, that that would be difficult for her to do, wouldn't it?
I think going on the radio would be about this kind of an issue would be hard for anybody. But it runs contrary to her keeping things inside and hiding it from others or being in a state of denial.
And last thing, Doctor, your opinion at page 44 of the report is that with a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Ms. McKenzie was upset and appropriately so, with a brief period of acceleration of anxiety symptoms following the incident question, reasonable it would resolve within 3 to 4 months, right?
Yes.
And you would also agree with me that along with that, we've got emotional distress, inconvenience, anxiety, humiliation, and mental distress during that same period of time, right?
At the time of the incident is what the questions you directed to me had to do with. As to 2 months and 4 months later, I don't believe you asked me questions about her feelings at that time.
She'd feel inconvenienced during that period of time, wouldn't she, by this whole thing?
Yes.
And during that same 3-month period of time, you would agree with me, she might continue to feel humiliated. Also true.
I'd be guessing, but it's possible, yes.
She told you that she was humiliated about this and that it lasted for at least during the time that Mayor Filner was in office. True.
I don't know if that was her statement. I'd have to go back and check.
And certainly you would agree that during this 3 to 4 month period of time, she would have mental distress, right?
For 3 to 4 months, that was my impression, yes. I know in my evaluation, she...
Well, objection.
Let's wait for the next question, please.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions?
Be direct.
Dr. Dario, when you're going by her description of what happened, are you then basing opinions simply what she's describing, not necessarily what she's describing is true?
Correct.
And you were asked a lot of questions about the medical records, and you mentioned that you felt that this patient had a good...
Okay, all right, stop right there. Mr. Schaefer, skip the windup, give him the pitch. Okay, the jury's been raptly paying attention to your examination and to that of Mr. Mitchell. They don't need a reminder of what was said. Ask the question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please.
Why did you feel she had a good relationship with her primary care physician?
I'm not clear of the question. As I understood, did she have a good relationship with her primary care physician?
Why did you feel that way is what Mr. Schaefer is asking.
Because there were many entries that had to do with her anxiety, her depression, her feelings, her life, problems that she was facing, and she saw that physician over many years. So I felt there was a trust, and also that physician in her detailed notes had a good psychological understanding of her patient, I think above the average.
The incident of April 21st, 2013, what was the first medical entry after that date?
I'm sorry, give me the date again.
After April 21st, 2013, what was the first entry in the medical records? And I'm referring to page 10 of the report.
Thank you. The first entry after 4/21/13 would have been a note of Dr. Adamson dated 5/20/13.
And what was that in conjunction with?
That had to do with right shoulder pain and rotator cuff pathology. There's no mention. I imagine he's an orthopedist. The next note by Dr. Luang would have been 6/11/13.
And what was that in conjunction with?
Again, about her foot. There was no comment on her emotional state.
Objection.
Denied. Motion to be implied, motion to strike is denied. Next question.
Regarding the issue of whether Ms. McKenzie felt the incident was offensive, did she ever describe in your interview of her contact with her buttocks specifically by Mr. Filner?
She did not use that description. She described him as coming up behind her and pressing against her, but did not describe it was the buttocks or her side, or she wasn't clear on that.
Did she ever indicate specifically that the conduct that she found offensive was the touching of her breast?
She found the touching of her breast by his arm. She denied that it was his hand. Offensive, yes.
Did she say what part of the arm was the conduct that she found offensive?
As best you can tell, somewhere between the elbow and the forearm, somewhere I believe in the lower arm area. I think I'm correct on that.
Did she ever describe that touching with the arm as being a sexual contact in nature?
She described it as being sexual, she thought. It was her perception of it. Touching her side and the side of her breast is the way she described it.
Did she elaborate why?
No.
You said some of her reactions were not reasonable. Why?
Objection. Vagueness.
Rule.
Yeah, under the section on credibility that I was being questioned, I wrote in there that there were concerns that I had. One being that there were the medical records did not show any complaints to her doctors about increased stress or worsening of her psychiatric condition. In fact, there was no mention of anything having to do with Mr. Filner until a year and a half later or more, December of 2014. So that would be the primary concern I had. No change in her mental state per the medical record description, and no mention of the situation to a doctor that she seemed to have a very good relationship with until a year and a half later. And then just in a note that she sent. She didn't discuss it in the session.
Last, you were describing the test results regarding repression, and you mentioned about the computer report, and I wanted to find out what was your scoring on that issue for repression.
For depression?
Repression.
Repression. There was no inordinate. I mean, she is the kind of person that is stoic. She's a strong person, successful person. She has a very important job. So I'm sure she has to put things in order, so to speak, and she has to selectively repress. But I didn't see any evidence that she was repressing this. She was quite open with people she knew, so I didn't see that it fit that model.
No other questions, John?
Thank you. Anything further?
One last one. Doctor, what she described to you and what you just said there was that from behind, Mr. Filner was pressing up against her, and you would agree with me that if he's pressing up against her from behind and putting his arm around her, that there is a possibility that he was touching her buttocks. True?
I wouldn't know. She described the episode to be 2 to 4 minutes to me and then 8 seconds in her deposition, so I wouldn't know.
Wouldn't know, huh?
No.
All right, good. Feel free.
Anything further, Mr. Schaefer?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Doctor, you may step down. You are excused. Mr. Schaefer, your next witness, please. Oh, sorry, Ms. Lotnick is calling.
Yes,
on that, please.
it would be Mr. Scott.
Mr. Chadwick, deputy, please.
While we're waiting for Mr. Chadwick, can I?
Fix up the stand?
Yes,
That would be
please.
grand. Thank you, Ms.
Yep.
Lotnick. Mr. Chadwick, stop right there. Raise your right hand and be sworn in, please.
You have enough pending before this court, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Scott Chadwick, Scottchadwick.
When you are ready, Ms. Lotnick, you may examine Mr. Chadwick.
Thank you. Mr. Chadwick, where do you work?
I currently work at the City of San Diego
And how long have you worked for the city of San Diego?
since January 6th, 2004.
And what position do you currently hold with the city?
I'm the City of San Diego's Chief Operating Officer
And how long have you held that position?
since October 31st of 2013.
And so that we have an understanding of your position, without going into too much detail, could you tell us briefly what your job as a chief operating officer entails?
Certainly. Under the general direction of the mayor, because we're in a strong mayor form of government, I supervise the mayoral departments, so that includes the daily operations of roughly 10,000 employees.
And prior to you holding the chief operating officer position, what was your prior position with the city?
My prior position with the city was as the Assistant Chief Operating Officer, and that was from July 15th of 2013 to October.
And prior to that?
And prior to that, I was the Interim Chief Operating Officer from March until July 15th.
And prior to that?
And prior to that, I was the city's Human Resources Director.
How long were you the city's human resources director?
From, I believe it was 2008, December 2008 to March of 2013.
And did you hold any prior positions with the city?
I did.
And what was that?
Prior to that, I was the Labor Relations Director, and that was from, I want to say, 2006 until December of 2007.
Personally, sir, have you ever witnessed any sexual conduct by Mr. Filner?
I have not.
And the incident in this case took place on April 21, 2013. Prior to that date, April 21, 2013, were you aware of any report or complaint that Mr. Filner had engaged in any sexual conduct?
I was not.
And also prior to that date, April 21, 2013, had you ever heard anything about any sexual conduct by Mr. Filner toward anyone?
I had not.
Right. Now, do you recall an incident in 2013 when you were apparently in the mayor's office for some other reason, and Alan Jones or Vince Hall asked you to come and meet with Amelia Santos Hunter about a sexual harassment complaint, but it turned out not to be a sexual harassment complaint?
Objection. Leave.
Compound.
Well, do you recall?
Sustained. Let's break it down.
All right, sure. Do you recall an incident in 2013 in the mayor's office when either Alan Jones or Vince Hall asked you to come and meet with Ms. Santos Hunter?
I do.
And what happened during that incident?
So it was around the beginning of June of 2013, and Vince Hall called both myself and Alan Jones into the mayor's main conference room, and Vince said that Alan had reported to him that there was a situation in which required our immediate attention, and it had to do with an allegation of a sexual harassment claim that Benelia Santos was making. Vince directed Benelia to also go into the room, and at that time Benelia indicated that no such instance of sexual harassment had occurred. And so we further drilled down, or attempted to drill down on that, and she's like, no, there must have been a big misunderstanding.
And were you in the, now was your office at that time within the mayor's office?
It was not.
Do you recall what you were doing? Well, were you in the mayor's office? Did you happen to be in the mayor's office anyway?
Yes.
And was there any discussion concerning the misunderstanding? What the misunderstanding was with Ms. Santos Hunter?
No. Alan reported it, and Benelia just responded that no, there must have been a misunderstanding. There was no sexual harassment.
And then after you understood there was a misunderstanding with respect to Ms. Santos Hunter, did you take any further action? I
did not.
And why not?
Because the individual who was supposedly reporting the incident, again, it was reported secondhand from Vince Hall of what he said that Alan Jones had reported to him. Then Alan and Benelia, Alan kind of tried to represent it. That's why they brought Benelia in. When I confronted Benelia about it, she indicated that no, there must have been a misunderstanding. So no further action was necessary at that point.
Did you have any reason to doubt Ms. Santos Hunter at the time when she said it was a misunderstanding?
I did not.
Did you ever find out what Ms. Santos Hunter had initially said to either Alan Jones or Vince Hall that was misinterpreted as a complaint of sexual harassment?
I did not.
Now I'm going to turn your attention to the EEO policy that is in front of you, Exhibit 16. Can we show, this is an exhibit that's already been admitted into evidence. Can we show it, Your Honor, please?
Yes, by all means.
All right, Exhibit 16, and let's look at page 1, the second paragraph. At the bottom, the last sentence that reads, although actions may not rise to the level of a violation of the law, they may still violate the city's EEO policy. Do you see that sentence, Mr. Chadwick?
I'm sorry, which page?
The first
Look
page.
up on the screen, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Should.
No, I see it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, do you see that sentence?
I do.
And what does that mean? That although actions may not rise to the level of a violation, they can still violate the city's EEO policy?
The city has a stricter EEO policy, so it's a little more comprehensive than what you would find under California law or under federal law.
And why does the city have such a policy?
So that we can make our best efforts to protect our employees.
Now, in regard to sexual harassment under the city's EEO policy, and I'll direct your attention to Exhibit 16, let's go to page, find it. Be page 4. Now, okay, get there. It's the paragraph that starts whether or not alleged action. Right here.
Okay.
You see that paragraph, Mr. Chairman?
I do.
Now, in regard to sexual harassment under the city's policy, how is it determined whether an alleged action constitutes sexual harassment?
Well, it will be fact specific, and I think what this says is based on the totality of circumstances. So, if in the event that a supervisor makes a report, it's incumbent on the employer to follow up with the employee to find out if there was in fact a violation of the policy or if the allegation could be sustained or not. Based on that interaction that I had with Benelia, I had no reason to believe that a situation like that existed.
Now, is an action, well, I'll direct your attention, Mr. Chadwick, to the paragraph, I guess it would be 2 paragraphs above where there's a list of examples, other examples of sexual harassment includes, and then there's a list of things. Do you see that?
I do.
Now, is an action sexual harassment under the policy just because it falls on one of the lists of examples of conduct that can be sexual harassment?
I'm sorry, I
Do you
don't.
understand the question?
I don't.
Is an action necessarily sexual harassment just because it falls on the list of things that can be sexual harassment?
It is not.
All right. And why is that?
Because again, these are examples, but there could be other situations. This is not an exhaustive list.
And based on your understanding of the EEO policy, can it be a violation of the policy for someone to gossip or spread rumors about another person's sex life?
It could.
Now, turning to Mr. Filner, when he became the mayor at the end of 2012, did you do anything in an effort to ensure that Mr. Filner was familiar with the city's policies and aware of the requirement that he take the city's sexual harassment prevention training?
I did.
And what did you do?
Prior to his arrival or becoming mayor, there was a transitional team that was formed. We provided it was an employee handbook and it was the first year that we were actually rolling out this handbook because this was going to be the first year since the transition of strong mayors. So we took lessons learned that had occurred over the last several years. We put it together in a comprehensive handbook or guidebook so that what we could do is then better inform or educate the incoming or the transitional folks that were coming in. So prior to his arrival becoming mayor, we provided that copy to him, and then once he immediately took office, I think I followed up with a PDF version to the mayor's chief of staff and to remind them that here's a copy of another guidebook.
All right, that's where we'll leave it for the new recess. Sorry, Ms.
Yep, no problem.
The noon hour is upon us. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we will continue to